Welcome again to Echoes of the Ancients and Part 3 of the Nez Perce War. In this episode, we'll follow the Nez Perce from the Weippe Prairie through the Bitterroot Mountains and a showdown in a narrow valley east of Lolo Hot Springs. Let's get started. After regrouping at the Weippe Prairie from the debacle at Clearwater, the chiefs discussed their options going forward. Many ideas were put forth, but it was Chief Looking Glass who championed the idea of going east over the Bitterroot Mountains, following their familiar route to the buffalo hunting grounds near Yellowstone. At this point, the Nez Perce were divided into two groups, the warring non-treaty Indians and the peaceful treaty Indians. Of course, many young warriors in the treaty bands wanted to join their brothers and sisters, and many did. An old man named Accompanying Cyclone rode into camp from the reservation to beg his son, Speaking Thunder, to put down his rifle and return home. He said, "Death awaits you on the trail you are taking. I see the future. It is dark with blood." Speaking Thunder chose to fight, proclaimed he was not afraid to die. The next morning they headed east into the Bitterroots, and despite the fact the route over the Lolo Trail was difficult with many obstacles, the men, women, children, and elderly, along with thousands of horses strung out over miles, were barely slowed. By this time, all the settlers in the Bitterroot Valley had heard about the killings in Idaho, and also that 750 desperate Nez Perce were heading towards them. The territorial governor issued an order for all men to arm themselves and report to the Lolo Trail to block the invaders. On Friday, July 27th, this spot found hundreds of men, including regulars and volunteers. There was even 20 or so Flathead Indians who tied white handkerchiefs to their heads to mark them as friendly.
What they did is they dug these fighting positions out, and then they stacked these logs up just like this, and then they used these as the gun ports, so they could get protection and still aim at the Nez Perce. Now, some of the soldier volunteers, the soldiers that served in the Civil War, they knew about this tactic. They introduced it to the local volunteers. Everybody embraced it, and then they built these entrenchments just like this. So what we're looking at is the original, one of the original gun emplacements, and they just replicated these logs, thinking this was going to be their range of fire.
The commanding officer, Captain Ron, rode several miles up the trail towards the Nez Perce with a white handkerchief tied to his rifle barrel. He hoped to convince the chiefs to surrender. The chiefs rejected his offer, and he rode back to the newly constructed barricades, telling the soldiers and volunteers that come morning, hundreds of Nez Perce warriors would attempt to smash through their lines. On the morning of July 28th, word came that the Nez Perce were on the move, but something unexpected happened.
So the Nez Perce got done waiting, and they went on the other side of these ridges, and they just basically went on the other side of these two ridges over the top, and then they taunted the soldiers as they were passing on top of these ridges and safely passed. After that, the volunteers thought, hey, the Nez Perce have always been friendly, we're just going to go back home. So this was it was a very, very slick military maneuver by the Nez Perce just to avoid the contact. So very, very neat piece of history.
This maneuver illustrated just how hardy the Nez Perce were. The soldiers were stunned by this feat and coined a new name for their position, Fort Fizzle. After avoiding the confrontation at Fort Fizzle, the Nez Perce headed south down the Bitterroot Valley. The settlers in the valley were holed up inside Fort Owen in Stevensville and very much feared for their safety. Chief Looking Glass got word out to the settlers that they wanted to travel through the region peacefully. The women, escorted by a small group of warriors, entered Stevensville to purchase supplies. They found the place deserted and boarded up, except for one business, Buck Brothers General Store. When news that the Indians were on the attack, the Buck brothers carted their inventory to Fort Owen. But as soon as they sensed there was money to be made, they restocked the store. The settlers in this region were familiar with the Nez Perce because they passed through frequently on their way to buffalo hunts and were considered friendly. The women were able to purchase many things they needed and paid with gold coins. Once resupplied, the Nez Perce continued down the valley with plans to turn east and join forces with the Crow Nation near Yellowstone. At this stage of the journey, the tribe was lulled into a false sense of security. Chief Looking Glass was accused of not going fast enough. Many warriors started having visions of impending doom. Lone Bird announced, "My shaking heart tells me trouble and death will overtake us if we make no hurry through this land." This prophecy came true soon enough at one of their traditional campsites, and part 4 will take us to Big Hole, Montana. Next time on Echoes of the Ancients.